Hi, everybody. Welcome to another fabulous Power to Fly Chat and Learn. My name is Meg. I am part of Power to Fly's hosting team, and I am so excited to see all of you here joining us for today's event. Now, before we dive in, I just want to go over some real quick housekeeping items. Super helpful if maybe this is your first Power to Fly event, in which case, welcome. We're so happy to meet you. Or if maybe this is you're a frequent flyer with us, but haven't been with us in a while. This will give you a good understanding of how today's event is going to go. Now, the biggest thing I want to share with y'all is participation. So you all took the time out of your day to be here with us. We want to make sure that you have the ability to participate as much as you would like to. You can do this in a couple different ways. You can turn your cameras on if you would like to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. No pressure to look Instagram perfect, y'all. Bring it. If you've got a messy bun, furry coworkers, a non-traditional workspace, we want to see it. So please understand, you don't have to stand on ceremony with us. We want to meet you where you are today. Now, if you do have any kind of privacy issues or concerns, I totally understand it. As long as you don't come off mute during today's session, you will not show up on the recording or the live stream. Now, if you do want to participate in another way, you are also welcome to add questions or comments to our Zoom group thread. So you can find that in your Zoom toolbar. It's under chat. I'll be hanging out in there as well. So if you've got questions for the speaker or you want us to expand and dive in deeper on a question, let us know in that group chat. I'm also there if you have a question or a comment that you would like to raise, but you want to be kept anonymous. All you have to do is DM it to me instead of sending it to everyone. You can find my name, Meg Alexander, on the drop-down menu in your Zoom chat. Now, like I said, today's session is being recorded, but that is only good news for all of you because it means that you don't have to take notes. You don't have to worry about if you missed the second list item that somebody shared or a resource that somebody recommends. You just get to kick back and enjoy today's session. Now, let's say that something happens on today's channel that, like Hady said, or Lord, I did it myself. Hady says something that is just so mind-blowing and unbelievable that you cannot wait to share it with a coworker or a friend or a relative. You can do that in a couple different ways. So like I said, we are live streaming to our YouTube channel right now. So you can always head over there once the session concludes. Usually takes about 5 to 15 minutes for the video to be posted, but you can always head over there and share that link with anybody that you would like to share this content with. Now, if you want to share or send them directly to the Power to Fly website, or maybe you're not quite sure how to get to our YouTube channel or anything like that, in about 1 to 2 business days, so probably Friday this week, y'all will get an email from Power to Fly. Everybody that registered is going to get this email, and it's going to send you a direct link to where you can watch this video when it's posted on our website. Once you're there on the site, you can search our entire library of recorded chats. We also have a huge section of those chats archived and available to search and watch for free on our website, on YouTube, our YouTube channel as well. I'll share links for all of these areas and all these sites in the Zoom chat in just a little bit here. Now, we are on various social media channels. So if you would like to share with your own social media network that you are learning with Power to Fly today, we would love to support that. So if you would like to, please feel free, take photos or video as we go, share it out. You can tag us if you'd like. We would love to repost, reshare, retweet, anything y'all share about us. We are at Power to Fly on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So please feel free to tag us. We would love to reshare your content or whatever you share with your group. Now, today's session is on behalf of Slack, which is a Salesforce company. Our guest is here speaking on behalf of, through her role at Slack. So one thing that I wanted to highlight for y'all is Slack's company page on powertofly.com. Now, that's what you're looking at right here. I'm going to share the link with y'all in the chat thread here in just a second. And what I want you to know about this page, once you go to the link that I'm putting in the chat right now, it's going to look much like what you're seeing in front of you. So this is what Slack's company page looks like on Power to Fly. From here, you can learn more about Slack, which is a Salesforce company acquired by Salesforce last year. You can also check out their event highlights. That's going to show you past events that they have partnered on with us, as well as events that they've got going on in the future. So a really great resource if you are planning on interviewing with Slack and want to make sure that you're able to talk to, recent developments with the company or to be able to share something that maybe isn't on the first page of Google results, right? So really, really awesome information. And as always, you can search and apply to their open roles right from our website. So I'm looking at the live page right now. They've currently got 135 open roles. You can search those jobs for title, location, all kinds of great stuff there. But one thing to know, especially if maybe you're not job seeking right now, but you want to, you hear something great about Slack and you want to make sure that you don't forget about them for later. Another really awesome opportunity for this is if you are actively job seeking, but don't really see anything on Slack's open roles right now that suits you. What I recommend is you go to the top right-hand corner of their company page, and there's going to be a big pink button that says follow. Clicking that button is going to put you on Slack's follow network, and it's going to do a couple really great things for you. But effectively what it does is it works like your friend at Slack. So it's going to let Slack know that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out a job application. But it's also going to allow us to keep you updated when they post new roles. So we've tried to take some of the tedium or the drama out of having to go back and check and recheck job boards. So let us do that work for you. Click follow on the companies that you are interested in, and we will make sure that you know when they post new roles. So absolutely take advantage of that feature. It is an excellent way to make sure that not only does Slack stay on your radar, but you stay on Slack's radar as well. Now, I cannot wait to introduce you to today's speaker. So Hady Méndez is the Director of Equality at Slack, which is a Salesforce company. And there she is responsible for shaping and advancing Slack's near and long-term focuses on inclusion and belonging. Now, Hady does this while simultaneously supporting Slack's work of attracting, growing, and retaining underrepresented talent at all levels. Hady has a diverse career that spans over 25 years, and she's held multiple customer-facing roles in high-tech and financial services, served as a leader across various employee resource groups, or ERGs. Hady has also volunteered as an international champion for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women, a very, very overlooked group at least within our country. And Hady has also served as community school director at an elementary school in the South Bronx. Hady, I am so excited to get to share the stage with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we dive into questions?
Nothing more about me, but just that I'm really excited to be here. So thank you to Power to Fly for having me. Hello to the Power to Fly audience that's here joining us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. All right. So the last thing I want to go over before we hit our questions are some of the main takeaways you can expect to get today. So what we're going to try and talk about are, we're going to dive into the idea of proximity bias, what it is and how to manage it. We're going to talk about some ways that you can advocate for yourself as a hybrid or a remote employee while also maintaining healthy boundaries, something that I know that I personally have struggled with. So I hope that y'all are really as excited as I am to get some answers on these topics. And the other thing we're going to touch on is how you can ensure as a manager or a leader that all your employees are receiving equal opportunity to grow and succeed. Now, like I said earlier, if you have a question that you would like to ask, let us know in the chat. If you asked a question when you registered and you're not sure if we're going to be able to get to it, ask it in the chat. I can't get you the answers if I don't know what y'all want to know. So if we want to dive in deeper on something, expand, maybe even we're just going over one of your questions and you want to give us some more context, please feel free to do that. Y'all throw it into that group chat there as y'all are connecting and networking with each other. So Hady, to get us started here, let me stop sharing my screen so we can focus. There we go. So one of the top things we wanted to talk about is what proximity bias is. So let's level set a bit, maybe for people who are not familiar with the term or aren't sure, how much of this topic we're going to be talking about today. How do you define proximity bias?
Yes, great question. And it's the right question to ask to kind of start off this conversation. So proximity bias in a nutshell, it's actually what it sounds like, to be honest with you. It's really when there's sort of like folks will exhibit either favoritism or some preferential treatment of colleagues who work in the same physical space as them or who work, physically close to us in any way. So, and I wanted to give some examples of how it might show up, just in case that's not clear. But I mean, I guess one of the most obvious examples would be like, let's say there's a business leader or even like a it could be a colleague too. So it's not just reserved for business leaders. Anybody can have proximity bias. So that's one thing to make a note of. But let's say there's a business leader who's on site, and like there's someone, an employee who shows up at the office and is regularly there, kind of on their floor or in the vicinity of where their office is, or where they're, where they're stationed whenever they're in the office. And that leader considers that employee to be more productive than remote employees or hybrid employees, simply because they can physically see that that person, that in-person employee is doing work. They can physically see them doing work, and they have to trust that the people who are not there are also working. So that's kind of where I think that's like the classic best example of what it might look like. But there are other varieties of proximity bias, and I'll give just one more example. And everyone probably has at this point had a hybrid meeting where some people were attending by phone and some people were there in person, and this is quite common. And I feel like I know at my company we make an effort to take take questions from people that are dialed in remotely. We almost do that first, just to make sure that we don't forget to include them. But I know that is probably not always the case. And sometimes people in the room forget that there's even people on the phone or on video. They even forget that those people are part of the conversation. And when you don't include them or give space to people that are not physically present, that's another example of proximity bias. So hopefully by now, it's kind of crystallizing, and you're thinking like, oh, maybe some light bulbs are going off and people are starting to realize where they may have seen this. I'll add one more thing, Meg, if I can, to this, to the definition and sort of the broad sweeping impact that it can have. This notion of proximity bias obviously affects people that are working remotely or are hybrid workers. And how this kind of intersects with equality, which is like my wheelhouse, is that it affects more women and working parents and people of color, because those are the people that are choosing to work remotely and hybrid the most. So that is why this now kind of spills into equality and things that, people in my role or in my capacity care about.
Thank you. Thank you for covering that topic, because you're right. It can be a very, a very big topic. It seems like a very large thing to try and get your mind around, but you're right. This is something that it's a fairly simple idea once you break it down, and it does make a ton of sense, right? We are visual, humans are visual creatures for a lot of reasons. And it just makes a ton of sense that, what you see in front of you is going to be something you think you understand, you think you know a lot better than something that is outside of your literal eye line. So I think that's a really great way to kind of level set and get us started here. All right, you talked a little bit about how proximity bias does not just impact leaders or managers or hiring people. So how can we determine if we are being affected by proximity bias at work?
Okay. Excellent question. I'm sure that's the next question everyone had. So I would say if decisions are being made or conversations are being had, and that impact your work, your project, the things that you're working on, and you're not included, you're not participating, you're not able to provide input, there's a chance that could be a sign that proximity bias is at work. But it's not a sure sign. Like this is like, it could also be that, someone was just having a conversation and they forgot that they needed to tell you the outcome of that conversation. And so this actually leads me to my next point, because I do feel that we're not always going to know when something is proximity bias versus, maybe, an issue with communication, or maybe with like people just not operating as quickly as we'd like them to. So maybe someone has it on their list and says, I'm going to make sure I tell Meg this conversation I had with Susie. And then, you heard about it first and you're like, oh my God, proximity bias. And maybe it wasn't that. So some ways to kind of stay ahead of this. I really feel like, folks need to be over communicating with their managers and team members. I do feel like to the degree that you're really staying in touch with people as a hybrid or remote worker, then I think you have less of a chance of this happening because you're always kind of top of mind. So if you're constantly saying, hey, like I'm working on this and I'm doing that, and I have a meeting scheduled with this team to talk about this, then I feel like people are gonna that's gonna remind people that they need to include you and that you're still a very important part of this team or this effort. I also feel like, you need to be constantly sharing your points of view. And I feel like when you are sharing your points of view, that is also a reminder to everybody of your contributions and why it's important to include you in the conversation. So if you're kind of like not like you're like underground and you haven't been, talked to anybody in 3 days, but they might forget you're part of the project. That's like, that can happen. But I would say if you're like on a consistent basis, staying top of mind, sharing your point of view, that is gonna kind of eliminate things like this happening. And I do feel like, documenting conversations and decisions as they happen is very important because, sooner or later, even if everybody's remote, you and I could still be having a conversation that involves a third person, and we want to make sure that we share and we say, hey, Megan and I were talking and this thing came up, and we wanted to make sure you knew that we had talked about that, and I don't know if you had already thought of that, but like where's your head at around this topic? And so I do feel like when you share and decisions and conversations, then that makes people feel more included and gives people an opportunity to provide their point of view or their input. And then, you need to be on a consistent basis meeting with your manager. If you have the opportunity to meet with your skip levels, you should be doing that too. You should be providing a written status report of everything that you're working on a regular basis. These are all things that kind of mitigate this, because proximity bias is a risk, right? And what do we do with risk? We mitigate them. So if you're doing all of these things, I think the likelihood that you're going to come up against proximity bias is lessened. I'm not going to say it's completely eliminated, but if you're consistently and constantly doing these things, I think you're going to find that you're going to be more included and more kept in the loop. And that's basically what we're looking to do, is to include people and make sure that they're having their voice heard and, being included in conversations and in decisions and in, when the opportunities come for special projects or promotions or advancement, that we're all like in the game, we're all in there and we're being considered.
Yeah. Well, and I love how, you're highlighting these things that we can do to help like lessen the potential for that proximity bias. But I think, it's also you make a very good point, which is like, if you're trying to determine these things, like determine if something you're experiencing is proximity bias, it's not that we want to put all of the work on the person that probably does need the support. It's more for yourself, right? So that you can know and be able to kind of clear the air, or like be able to see more clearly, like, am I usually doing something that would contribute to proximity bias? Because no. So because I know that I am taking the steps I need to make sure that, like, I'm being proactive on my own behalf, you then have a much easier time realizing, like, oh, this actually might be proximity bias because I know that I'm already doing all of these things.
Yes, I'm going to hang up now because I think you can do the rest of the.
No, you're making my job easier. Stop. I'm going to stop talking so you can talk more.
Yeah, you're spot on, 100% what you just said. And just like everything else about our careers, we're playing an important role in making sure that things go the way we want them to go. And so if it's not proximity bias, it can be any other kind of bias, because Lord knows there's plenty of those going around.
Ooh,
so
yeah.
We just need to be as proactive and as intentional as we can. And if we're doing that, I think we're minimizing the chances that we're going to be impacted by it.
I like this. We got a lot of people in here that are agreeing with you. One person had said, as a Black woman in corporate, I experience less racial microaggressions while working remotely or from home. So it's hard to want to go back, which makes a ton of sense. Valerie was also in the chat saying that they agree with you. This person says, I was a working mother and I had asked for remote for many years to my manager, and she didn't want to let me do it because I was always so helpful in the office and I would speak up and contribute to the team. And finally, she let me become remote, and then I noticed no more projects given to me. So that's something important to know, right? To be able to see the difference between when you are physically in front of someone and when you're not. And I feel like this is something that is very hard for people to balance when they are either like one of the few remote employees where they work, or if they are a hybrid employee. And so there's time in and out of that office, right? That's when I think like you would probably see that difference, or see that conflict or contrast with what you're usually experiencing. So like you talked about, as a remote employee, what else do you think, like, is it just limited to things like that over communication with your manager? Or do you think there's anything else that as a remote employee you can do as opposed to being an employee that is in the office to avoid that proximity bias?
There's a lot we can do. And I would say to the person who is experiencing less projects or less special assignments, I would have a conversation with your manager directly about that and just openly express your interest to continue to play that type of role on the team. And you'd be surprised, that there's almost nothing that we can do remotely. So you should be able to resume that role pretty quickly. It could be oversight, who knows, but there's a saying in Spanish, hablando se entiende la gente. You have to, which means like you have to talk to people. So that communication thing is important, not just to let people know what you have going on, but just to talk and understand each other, make sure you're on the same page. So if something stopped happening that you were hoping would continue to happen, I would have an honest, open dialogue about your desire, but some other things, because what I'm hearing you ask is like, what are some tips? So some tips I would say is stay informed. So this is almost like you got to know everything that's going on. You got to be like the busy bee. And I feel like if you were in the office, like when you go get coffee, you might hear some people talking, or on your way to the bathroom, somebody stops you and says something, or like you hear like two teammates behind you talking. And I think you just need to stay close to what's happening in the organization, who's leaving, who's moving on to a different position, well, who are the new leaders, who are the new projects. You should know all of that. There's not really an excuse in this day and age for you to be like, well, I'm not in the office, I don't know what's happening. There's like so many ways to stay informed. I do feel like it is very important to stay informed. There's a thing that we like to say is Slack, and it's like read Slack or read a lot of Slack. Like Slack is like essentially people's conversations around the office. And you should be, if you have Slack or some other collaborative tool, you should be reading what are in some of the, certainly be reading what's on all of your primary channels, but you should be reading what's all in all your secondary and tertiary channels too. Like you should know what's happening with the ERGs, what's happening with the office, what's the special that like at Salesforce, we have like an Ohana floor and they have like these special coffee drinks that they make every week. I know what this, but I don't go to the office very much, but I know when they have like the, dulce de leche colada, I know what's coming this week. So I'm very aware of that. And I feel like it's good to stay close to that, because you can always, like, if someone says they're in the office, you say, oh, did you go up to the Ohana floor and get something to drink? Like you could easily have the same information, and you should be utilizing the information in the same way you would as if you were in the office. And I also feel like if you are kind of like a hybrid worker, so maybe not 100% remote, but someone who maybe lives near an office space, but just doesn't choose to go very much. I'm one of those people. I would say I do go to the office with intention. So if I'm going to have a performance review, that's something I'd like to do in person. If I'm going to meet with some coworkers that are visiting from out of town, if an ERG, an employee resource group, is going to have like a really fun event, like Hispanic Heritage Month is coming up next month, and they're going to do a marqueta in the lobby, and I'm going to be like, I'm going because I want to go shopping and I want to eat some snacks, and it'll be fun. So, and I can see people that I haven't seen in a while, and to me, that's worth it. So I'll make a intention to come in for like a kickoff or something like that. So I would say, if you have the opportunity to visit an office, even quarterly or with some frequency, but not like everyday type thing, I would do it, and I would just be very strategic so you can make the most out of it, kind of kill two birds with one stone. And then I would say just make sure that you are communicating with intention. I talked about status reports before. I talked about reading a lot of Slack, but you should be also posting a lot of Slack. So if you have things to say, points of views to share, status reports to give, ways, inviting people to collaborate with you, curious about what other people are doing, all of that you should be putting out there so people know you. I'm telling you, I must have spent 9 months in my house before I came to the office for the first time when I started working for Salesforce. And that did not stop me from building relationships and for people feeling like they knew me. And they knew me because of the things that I'm talking about. I provided points of view. I was, out there when people posted something, like lots of times people post something, they're posting some stuff like people could comment and like acknowledge it. So do that, acknowledge it, like right now it's promotion time at the company as of August 1st. So earlier this week, people were getting promotions. Every time somebody shares they've been promoted, like I'm happy for them. I celebrate with them. I have an emoji or like I'll congratulate them. So you should be out there doing that. And even if you don't know the person like really well and they don't know you really well, that's neither here nor there. You're part of one company and everyone should be talking to each other. So I would say those are the things you should be doing. Those are some tips I have.
I think those are good tips, so stay informed, obviously, go into your office with intention and communicate with intention when you do that. And I think, you hit the nail on the head. You want to, if you have the ability to get FaceTime, use it, use it and make the most of it in a way that makes sense for you and your schedule and what you want to do. I think that's fabulous. So when it comes to that intention, Nicole is in the chat actually bringing up a good point. They said, my whole team is 100% remote and scattered across the state. Management does not do well with transparency, so not everyone will know about updates or decisions at the same time, and this creates a lot of problems. So just as, for personal curiosity, if you are working at a place like Nicole is describing that does not have that transparency from the top down, is there any way for us to, let's put it this way, have you seen any approaches work to, to HR or to leadership to say like, hey, I think we could be doing this better? Have you seen this happen? Have you had to do this yourself?
Well, I would say about the transparency, you're part of the team, so you can help set the tone. I think you can share something with everyone and say, hi, team. I just wanted to share my status update. I recently did this because I was sharing an update with my manager and, we were like, maybe more people want to know about this. Yeah. Let's kind of broaden the reach of this. So I do feel like there's always an opportunity for you to set the tone. Why not you be the person, or be the change you want to see in the world? So if you want,
if you're the one getting this information and seeing like, hey, I got this, but I know that none of the remote workers have this info, like be the person that does it, tell them what's going on. And then you can go back to your, back to HR, back to wherever and say like, hey, I noticed that these people haven't been getting what they need. I've been like sending it when I see it, but there has to be a more efficient way for us to do this.
Yeah. And I do think like before going to HR, I would have a candid conversation with your manager or your management team. Like, I do feel like managers, I think are usually open to feedback and want to have the best practices on their team, right? They want their team to be efficient, productive, like work well together, collaborate.
It's in their interest.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe it's oversight, right? We always want to assume best intentions. So maybe this was an oversight and you could always say, hey, I noticed this. And so I sent out the notes so to make sure that everybody had it. If you'd like, I could, create a shared drive where everyone can always have it and we can all throw our stuff in there so everyone can see it, or, come with, not only identify the issue, but also maybe show up with some solutions, some potential solutions.
Yes.
And always kind of lead, because when you show that A, innovation, and B, proactivity, being proactive about something, I think that also speaks to your leadership and your, it's a couple of things, you're thinking like a leader, but you're also being really considerate and thoughtful of your colleagues. And those are two great characteristics to have if you want your leader to notice you.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, right? You are trying to, like you said, you're trying to be that change that you want to see. But, I feel like no matter whether you're in leadership or whatever, people are constantly bringing problems to you, right? And so bringing a problem, but also bringing a potential solution, even if you know that the manager's not going to approve that solution or they're going to want to go in a different way, that proactivity shows that not only is this something like a problem that you want to see fixed, so you're bringing it to their attention, but you care enough about it to want to be sure something is done. So hey, here's something that we could do that I think might work. That way you are being as proactive as possible. And it's far less of I have a problem, fix it for me.
Yeah, I feel like lots of times it happens where employees are kind of complaining, but to each other, and not kind of elevating the issue to someone who can actually, have some meaningful change. So I would say, like, escalate it to someone who is in the position, and also come with those ideas, come with some solutions. I think that combination can be very fruitful.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay, so I wanted to kind of pull back a little bit into some more like employee specific questions. This person had asked if you could share some practical ways in which hybrid and remote employees can advocate for themselves, especially around topics like career growth and advancement. So we talked about this a little bit when it comes to, stuff like sharing promotion news with everybody. What do you think that people should be keeping in mind, or should be preparing themselves to do, so that they can do that self-advocacy in their works now?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is not a new, I guess, subject matter. Everyone wants to always be advocating for themselves and ensuring that they're on a path to career growth and advancement. So this is whether pre-COVID, post-COVID, home, remote, it doesn't really matter. So I would say there's a couple of really like clear ways that we can do that. I think first and foremost, you have to have a plan, a development plan with very clear goals about what it's going to take for you to advance, if that's what your goal is, or for you to grow in your career or in your role, or for you to whatever it is that you're looking to do next, or whatever growth and advancement means to you. But typically it's promotion. So let's say I have an individualized development plan with some very clear goals on how I get promoted in the next 12 to 18 months. And my manager, very important, has bought into this. So it's not just like what I said, but like we've had a conversation and we agree that this is the plan. And if I follow this plan and achieve these goals or exceed these goals, it's going to happen. So, all right, boom. So that's where we start. Then I think there's a couple of other things. One is, and I want to talk about self-advocacy versus self-promotion, because some people use the words interchangeably and they are quite different. So I wanted to talk about both of them. Self-advocacy is like, hey, I want to take like a special course. I want to go to a conference. I want to get a certification. There's something that I want to do, and I think that it's going to add value to me, to what I bring to the role, what I bring to the team, what I bring to the project. So I'm advocating for myself so I can get this thing that I want. That's self-advocacy. Self-promotion is really about not documenting, but like identifying how you've made a contribution. So I can say that this might be a self-promotion thing that I do, and I say, hey, Mr. Manager or Miss Manager, I have literally changed hearts and minds in this organization. People are doing things differently. People are looking at things differently. People are approaching the work differently because of my ideas, because of my recommendations. I've had an impact. Now we hire more underrepresented people. We are able, our brand is more recognized by more people. We put out more software, or we have more releases because of my contributions. That is self-promotion. And so I just wanted to like tell kind of first note that there is a difference, and two, say that you need to do both. You should be doing both to advance your career, right? You want to get the things that are going to help you to continue to grow, and you want to tell people all the amazing things that you're doing. And I am an I am remarkable instructor, and we say it's not bragging if it's based on facts. So you can knock yourself out with the self promotion. And then I would say, if you have an opportunity to sign up for some career coaching, go for it, do it. Career coaching can be life-changing. It can be really helpful to get another ear and another, point of view on what you're looking to achieve and the path that you're on. And if you're like having some issues or barriers to growth and opportunity, then maybe they can lend you some, they can just give you some more food for thought. So I love career coaching. I've always felt very supported when I've had a career coach. And then last but not least, I would say, get yourself a sponsor. If you don't have one, everyone needs one, whether you're working remotely or not, especially though, I think if you are remote, then make sure you have a sponsor, someone who's advocating on your behalf in the rooms or spaces or virtual calls that you're not present at. It's really important to have people that are going to be either familiar with your work or willing to get to know you and the contributions you make, and that they're going to be able to speak up on your behalf. So that's really important too.
I'm loving this advice. And you're right. I think it's really important to kind of detail out and drill down on what each thing is, because you're right. They do sound very, very interchangeable, but that self-promoting is more about like, here's what I've done and what I should be getting as a result of this. Whereas self-advocating is more along the lines of like, here's what we need to keep all of this working properly, or here's what I need to be supported so that I can do my job effectively.
Yeah, and I would add again, insights, because I am an I Am Remarkable instructor. A lot of people don't like self-promoting. Many people shy away from it, and for different reasons.
Weird, right?
Yeah, it does feel weird, and sometimes it's like you get the stink eye. People look at you like sideways if you start self-promoting. But I do feel like the more you get comfortable with it, and then it just kind of sounds natural. And the other thing too, I always tell my students when I'm teaching, other people are doing it. So if you're not doing it, it sounds, I'm not going to say it's true or fact, but it sounds like you're not doing as much as the next person. If they're constantly self-promoting and you're not, it sounds like they're accomplishing more. They may not be, but that's what it sounds like. So that's what you're up against. So if you choose to not self-promote, I feel like just be aware of that, because other people are doing it.
That's a very good point, right? If you have all of these other voices kind of chiming up and saying like, hey, here's what's going on with me, that silence might speak louder than you think it does. Like that silence might be saying something that you don't want it to communicate to people. Mm-hmm. All right, so we've got a little less than 30 minutes left in today's session. So if y'all have questions that you want to ask Hady, please feel free to throw those into the group chat. You can also DM them to me if you have a question that you'd like to raise, but you want to be kept anonymous. All right, so let's talk about networking as it pertains to, within your same org. This person wanted to know, how can I effectively continue to foster these relationships when part of the team is meeting at the office and thereby building stronger relationships? So let's say that you have started that networking, but like, what do you need to do to keep those relationships fresh, keep them like up to date or up, top of mind with people? What should we be doing as somebody who is remote in a not fully remote work environment?
Yes, great question. I like the word you used, to keep it fresh, and like that is the name of the game. And also just, again, keeping yourself top of mind. It's like you're kind of, well, anyway, but let me answer the question. So I was going to make a joke, but I'm going to just answer the question. All right. So I will say this, couple things. One is, you can arrange virtual coffee dates. So I have what I call virtual cafecito with a bunch of people on the regular basis. And it seems like, you're just going to like shoot the breeze. Oftentimes, quite frankly, it is a welcome break from the day. So I look forward to all of my virtual cafecitos, but it's my way of staying in touch with people. So like, just yesterday, I had cafecito with someone that she and I were part of an ERG together, and we no longer are part of the ERG. But I said, oh, well, let's stay in touch. And then I just put myself on her calendar so that we can continue to stay in touch, even though we're not working on that ERG together anymore. But I would say, when you schedule the virtual coffee, you don't need an agenda. These are essentially, it's like a water cooler moment type of thing. And I do feel that oftentimes, you talk about like personal stuff, like who got COVID and, what are we planning for vacation? But then we also talk about like projects we're working on, or how's work, or like, what are you working on? Or this thing happened. And it's like, oh, that's so funny that this just happened to me also. I had cafecito with someone earlier this week, and she was telling me about this really cool, like inclusive language list that someone on her team came up with. And I'm like, oh, send that to me, because I think I could use that for something I'm doing. So then all of a sudden we're collaborating. We're not part of the same team. We're not nothing to do with each other, but all of a sudden we're collaborating. And I love that. And I love that I have friends in other parts of the company that I can do that with. I would also say that volunteering for I will call them meaningful assignments, is also another way to network and meet other people. I think when I say meaningful assignments, I mean that you're going to get more exposure to either a leader or a team that you want to get exposed to. So it might be something not related, like let's say your team has to interact. I used to be a customer success manager and we were doing stuff with, let's say, customer support. And I'm like, oh, I'll volunteer to be the liaison. And then all of a sudden, I know all these customer support people, which would seem like, so what, like big deal. Well, customer support people, if anybody on the phone is a customer success manager, you know how important those people are. So let me tell you something. I had those relationships were quite fruitful. And I was very happy to have friends in customer support because I needed them from time to time. So I will say that that's just an example of how you can use a volunteer opportunity to work for you. And then I would say, I've talked a little bit about ERGs, the employee resource groups. If you have them at your company, I hope all of you do, you should be volunteering to have a role on them. That's often a great way to develop your leadership skills and meet lots of people. And I would say that, when I first joined Salesforce, I was part of MuleSoft, which is like another acquired company. And I was able to meet so many people that were not part of MuleSoft just by joining the employee resource group that I had in my region. So I would say it's a wonderful way to meet people that are outside of your department, outside of your teams, etc. And the last thing, I'll end this part of like the networking kind of conversation with one thing that I think is really important, and it's about building your brand. And I would say that building your brand just really, you're creating the narrative that lets people know the full breadth of your contributions. So like sometimes you can't control every narrative, but when you are intentionally building your brand, you're controlling what people know about you and where and how they see that you're contributing to things. So social media, LinkedIn, if you're not already like a regular contributor to LinkedIn, you might really want to think about that, because that's probably the best place right now that you can be building your brand. And it's, you can say whatever you want to say, and it could be related to your job, and it could just be related to you as a person, as a professional. So that, it doesn't have to be about your work. It can be about things you've learned or experiences you've had or stories or lessons that you've learned that you want to share with other people. And I think when you provide your point of view, whether it's on a panel, at a conference, by way of a blog post, on a podcast, it almost doesn't matter the vehicle. I think you're just letting people know more about you, and you expand your network. I cannot tell you the amount of strangers that are now people that I'm connected to on LinkedIn, and so many people will ask me if, hey, can we meet? And when I have time, I meet with I don't know, yeah, hey, Brian is saying he's one of them, and he's right. He and I connected on LinkedIn, and I make so many friends with people on LinkedIn, and it's wonderful. Brian and I don't work at the same company, but we're cool with each other, and we've been able to support each other in our efforts. And that's what it's all about. So I think about networking not only within your own company, but also more broadly in your industry and even in the world. People from other regions too.
Excellent. Okay. We had a lot of questions asked, so I'm going to try and get to as many as we can today. This person had said, our company has provided the option to work from home, but most of my colleagues are choosing to return to the office. I end up feeling so guilty that I'm working remotely that I tend to overwork myself. Any tips on how to navigate this guilt? This is a big one.
Stop feeling guilty. That's the first thing I would tell you. Eliminate the guilt. I would say, listen, I think you should be clear in your mind what your goals are, because in the end of the day, that's really what work is about. It's about outcomes and impact. So if you are clear on what your goals are, if your manager is aligned to what your goals are, if you are tracking the progress towards your goals, if you are sharing that progress with your manager, with your team, maybe on LinkedIn, who knows where you're sharing, but you're celebrating your progress and you're making good progress. Gosh, to me, at the end of the day, if you and your manager are both aligned and you're really focused on measuring outcomes and the impact that your work is having, it should not matter where you are. You could be at the beach every single day. And I will tell you a story. When COVID started, I worked in a different team in a different company, and there was this one person on my team that kept every day this person had another like contract signed. Like we were in a CSM situation, and that person was getting deals over deals every day. And this was the person that was like in Mexico, at the beach, I don't know, Aruba, the Bahamas. They were like everywhere, but in New York. And this person kept closing deal after deal. Do you think the manager cared where that person was? I don't believe the manager could care less where that person was. That person was closing deals and getting contracts signed. It did not matter where that person was. And, you know, in the end of the day, you know, 2.5 years later, I think we've all learned that lesson, that it doesn't really matter where we are. We need to prioritize what's important, have our goals, you know, clearly defined for us, and just be able to always be able to share where we are towards tracking towards those goals, what barriers we're facing and how we're working through them, and celebrating the wins that we're getting along the way. If we're doing that, I think it's a non-issue. So to whoever that was and anybody else who's feeling guilty, go to sleep tonight with, you know, restfully, because you don't need to worry. Oh, I can't hear you. Meg,
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself and just realized I had muted it. No, I think that that's completely accurate. You know, feeling that guilt, it's all in your head. That doesn't mean it doesn't feel guilt. Like, I totally get it. I've been there. There's a lot of things that my brain tells me that are not true either. But like, feeling that guilt is only hurting you.
Yeah.
You know, feeling that guilt does not get you know, extrapolated or communicated out to anybody else outside of, you know, the meat sack that runs your whole, all of you. Like, nobody can see that besides you. So it's not helping anything. And you know, obviously this person realizes that they are overworking themselves. So once you realize that, excellent.
Shut it down.
It's hard to get there, but once you realize that, you got to shut it down. This person had said, I've been struggling with proximity bias for a while. I've been working a great number of hours in order to get a promotion. I know that colleagues are in office are getting better opportunities. So what tips do you have for advancing my career while still maintaining those healthy boundaries? And this is a hard one for a lot of people, right? Especially in America, we're told like, well, if you just grind harder, you'll get that promotion or you'll get that opportunity. So what would you say to this person?
Yeah, I think it's a really fair question. And I think healthy boundaries are important. I also feel that, you know, if you are noticing that people in the office are getting better opportunities, it doesn't mean that that's proximity bias, by the way. It could mean, it doesn't always mean. So you have to then now go back to yourself and go through the checklist and make sure you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. Because I think if you don't take anything else away from our conversation today, you should take away that you played the biggest role in managing proximity bias. So having said that, I would say that a good place to start is just to define what advancing your career, or when you say, I want to advance my career, what does that look like for you? Because that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. For a lot of people, it means promotion. It sounds like that's what this person is looking for, but that's not all that people are looking for. Some people are looking for more money. You know, I've had people tell me, I don't care, you can call me, you know, the janitor, you could call me the guy who, I don't know, it doesn't matter what you call me. If you're paying me, you know, what I need, what I'm hoping to be making, then I'm going to be happy. And it doesn't matter what title I have. Some people just want a new role. They're looking to change roles. They're looking to be part of a new team. That's what advancing their career looks like. They're done. They've done everything they can on this team, 5 years into it. Now they need a new role and a new team. And that's what advancing means. And some people just want a special assignment, and that's going to make them happy. So I guess at the end of the day, first start off with just defining what that looks like for you. And then I think I've talked a lot about this too today, so I'll reiterate it here, which is that you need to be aligned with your manager. Like, that's really important. If you're not in alignment with your manager, I don't think you're going to get a lot of the things you're hoping for. So I'm sorry if that's like bad news for you, because some people don't have good managers. And I know that this can be hard news to accept, but it is the reality. You and your manager need to be aligned. And if you and your manager align, things are going to go so much better for you. So you need to get your manager on board, get them singing the tune that you want them to sing, aligned with your aspirations and your dreams, the things that you want, they should see it too, right? So let's say you got them there. Well, then make sure you document how you're progressing. So if you are all aligned, and let's say my goal is to get a new role at the end of this cycle, these next 6 months, make sure that you are revisiting this conversation on a regular basis. It is not a one and done conversation. It is something you need to be reminding your managers of all the time. Why? Not because they're bad people, not because they intentionally don't want to help you get to where you want to go, but they probably have a lot of competing priorities. And you need to remind them that this is one of their priorities, is to help you get to the next level, or get the special assignment, or get more money, or get the promotion. So you need to be there. You need to own that. And then you need to hold them accountable. And like I said, just revisit it as often as you can. If you have a one-on-one, I would say at least every other one-on-one, you should be revisiting like what it is that you want and you're hoping for, and making sure that they are still right there with you. You don't want any surprises. And the way to manage and mitigate surprises is by communicating and getting on the same page.
Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of flesh out what you had said there, when you talk about keeping people up to date, or by documenting these kinds of discussions, what do you mean by that? Like, what do you do to document, when you're saying, like, using that as a tip for any of these situations?
Yeah. At my company, we have like an individualized development plan, and that's where we document it. So that's where we'll have a conversation early in the year, and we'll say, these are the things that I'm hoping for. This is what I am expecting over the next 12 months. And these are the things that I'm going to be doing. And then we revisit that on a quarterly basis and just say, yep, everything still looks good. Some things might have changed because things change, right? Like we can't predict. 12 months out is a long way to go. So we can't always predict that, but we're going to try our best, and we might make some adjustments as needed to accommodate anything that may have changed over the course of the last few months. But I do feel like if you don't have a formal process at your job, which, that's possible, then I would just say, like, literally document it, put it in a Word, a Quip doc somewhere, and have like a table that says, here's the goal, here's how we're going to measure this goal, here's when we're expecting this goal to be achieved, and any like column for notes to say, this means that I'm going to collaborate with this other team, or this means that you're going to send me to a special training class, I'm going to get certified in order to achieve this goal, or whatever it is. And just document it all and put it in writing and share with them and say, yep, I documented everything we talked about, here it is. And then just keep working from that document.
No, I think that's great. I think that's very good advice. We maybe have time for one more question, so I'm going to ask one more, and then we'll have to jump to a little bit more information about Slack.
Okay.
But how can we point out to our leaders when we experience proximity bias without risking being just labeled as sensitive? And this is a very important question, right? Because not everybody's going to understand or agree that what you're experiencing is proximity bias. So what recommendations do you have for people that are going through
this is a very important question. And I don't even know if most senior leaders even know what proximity bias is. So I don't know if I would necessarily use that word. And I'll try to give you an example, because I do feel like, obviously, if we're like accusing people of things that we don't really have good evidence of, that's just not going to lead to a good conversation. So there might be a way to raise a concern or raise a flag without pointing a finger or judging another person. So here's how I would do it. So, and I would say, this is probably exactly the same consideration you would give to anything that you would bring up with a senior leader. I would not recommend you show up to any senior leader's door and say, I think you've been doing this thing, or you've been doing that. Like, probably not the best approach. So this is a universal approach. And it's a lot about what we talked about earlier, where we're going to show up with a concrete example and a possible solution. So here we go. I noticed that there was some discussion at the office about a particular topic, my project, that not everyone got to sit on. So that means that maybe, somebody, Susie, called you and was like, guess what? We were talking about your project and you weren't there that time that you didn't come to the office, or that time that you didn't dial into the phone call. So you heard, right? And so you're asking the manager now, how can we make sure that moving forward, everyone has an opportunity to be part of the discussion and weigh in? So I'm getting to the part where I'm going to make a recommendation. Perhaps when impromptu meetings take place in the office moving forward, notes or video clips, like if you use Slack video clips, you can use video clips to update people. Capturing what was discussed are then shared with the rest of the team, either via Slack or some other way, for comments and feedback. And then, so you said the problem is that there was a conversation and not everybody was part of it. Perhaps in the future, we can document this and share it with everyone after that conversation takes place. And then the last thing, and I think this is important, is this a team agreement that you can get behind? So now you have told the manager what the issue is, how to solve it, and now you're just saying, are you good? Because if you're good with this, I can send out the note that's going to tell everybody that this is what we're going to do moving forward. And then hopefully that solves the problem. I'm hopeful about it. I think some variation of that could work.
I love this. I think that's a great response. You really set our people up for, or set our audience up for success if they have to go have this talk. So thank you for that. All right, we have 5 minutes left in today's session. The time always goes unbelievably fast. But I wanted to make sure that we, oh yeah, please go.
One super duper quick announcement.
Yeah.
So Slack, I've mentioned Slack a couple of times, and I just wanted to share that Slack actually is part of a consortium. And this consortium is called Future Forum. And if you go to www.futureforum.com, it's a website and you can learn all about the consortium. Why you care is because they basically are doing research and getting executives together, thought leaders together, academic people together to study the very thing that we're talking about, the future of work and how we make it a more flexible, inclusive, and connected place. So you really should check out Future Forum if you haven't, because there's a lot of good resources there. And maybe you could send your manager, team lead, somebody in your organization a link to the website and say, oh, I found this really cool website, and look, you should check out this particular post or this particular article or this particular survey. I thought it was so informative. And then maybe you could get people to learn a little bit more about the topic. That's the end of my commercial.
No, I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I shared some links in the chat thread there. So if people are curious, I shared the link for Future Forum. I also shared the link to Hady's LinkedIn profile there. So please feel free to reach out there. What you're seeing in front of you, we asked Hady some questions about Slack as a company, what it's like to work there. I want to talk about your top tips for someone who's interviewing. Are these specific for interviewing with Slack, or are these, do you think these are applicable no matter where you're interviewing?
I think they're all applicable no matter where you're interviewing. And then the bonus question is probably more a little bit related to Slack. So, I talked about know the product. Like, yeah, you want to know like how we're making a difference in the world. We consider ourselves like the digital headquarters of most organizations. And it is really, really important that you understand how Slack fits into the future of work and how we position ourselves in that regard. And then obviously you want to talk about how you personally can add value and like, what are some things that make you special or unique that will contribute, kind of contribute to our culture and our environment. But in the case of Slack actually stands for something. The letters SLACK stand for something. Like Slack was not an arbitrary name. It actually is an acronym. And I just want to make sure that if anybody is interviewing for Slack, and I hope you all are, I really, really hope you are, that you know what Slack stands for. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble.
No, I think that's great advice. I think it's very interesting to see what kind of questions people ask in job interviews. And that was something that's always been one of my tips for my friends as well, is like, have like a question in your back pocket that is professionally related to the client, to the company that you're interviewing with. And my other one that's like an evergreen is ask your interviewer, what is the most fun thing that they do for their employees? What's your favorite thing that is a perk or a bonus or something that the employees enjoy doing every year? Kind of gives you a little bit of insight into what the casual culture is like within the company, and not just what the official, like, this is what we're aiming for kind of thing. So Hady, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for spending the last hour with us. This has been absolutely wonderful to get to know you and get to learn some more about your experience, especially with proximity bias. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience before we sign off today?
Just thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting. I hope that you found some of the tips and the insights helpful. And I wish you the best of luck. I think everybody can be a successful employee no matter where you are. So I hope you feel that way. This has helped you to feel that more that way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hady. Huge thank you also I want to extend to our audience, whether you are watching us on Zoom or YouTube or on our website. Thank you so much for your attendance. We really, really appreciate all the participation. We had great conversations going on in the chat, and I love to see that. I love to see y'all connecting with each other. If this has been your first Power to Fly event, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this will not be your last. And if you are one of our frequent flyers and we see you all the time, thank you so much for coming. I can't wait to see y'all on new chats going on in the future. It's really fun for me to get to see so many familiar faces or familiar profile pics. So thank you all so much for attending and for your participation. We have some more amazing chats coming up during the rest of today's week or the rest of the week. So I hope that y'all will take advantage of some of those. We got one happening tomorrow about using career frameworks to lay a foundation for equitable treatment. So absolutely, check out some of those other events we've got going on. That's going to be it for us today, but I hope you have a safe, happy, and healthy rest of your Wednesday. And we can't wait to see you in the future. Have a nice day, y'all. Bye.
Bye, everybody.